I find myself torn between loyalty and the harsh reality of my family's situation. The weight of my parents' decisions looms heavily over me. I can't help but feel that their refusal to return to their own country is not only impacting their lives, but mine as well. It's a difficult choice, but I feel I might have to abandon them if they don't reconsider. We'll get into that in a bit. But first, am I the jerk for making eggs at 3 a.m.? Male, 25, had to pull an all-nighter for an assignment, and I got hungry, so I tried to make it 3 a.m. My roommate, Jane, female, 22, is a light sleeper, so I didn't make any loud noises, but she awoke to the sizzling sound of the frying pan. Jane became enraged and demanded that I remove the eggs from the pan due to the sizzling noise, but I'm not sure if I'm being inconsiderate or if Jane simply needs earplugs or a noise machine. So, am I a jerk for frying eggs at night? Or is Jane just a light sleeper who makes sizzling noises at night, which is considered acceptable roommate behavior? So, personally, I'd assume that anything that sounds like the background noises that occur when you're preparing food will almost never make you a jerk. Perhaps there are some poor choices, such as popping popcorn in the middle of the night, but overall, I don't think Opie is a jerk, especially when it's for a very good reason. Like they're studying, working, and hungry. It's not even necessarily a question of why you're up at this hour making food. Dom, a Greek American, commented, "Not the jerk. Of course. You should be able to cook yourself a meal in the middle of the night. Assuming you did what you claim, you are not making too much noise. If Jane sleeps lightly, she should take precautions. I've used earplugs successfully in the past." Opie responded, stating that Jean's main concern was the sizzling noise when we interacted. But I imagine Jean was also perplexed or irritated. I was cooking at 3 a.m., also. Hello, my name is Steven, and if you enjoy deciding whether or not all of these people are jerks, please click the like and subscribe buttons below. That being said, am I being a jerk by not sitting with my partner at a funeral on Monday? It was my father's funeral. I was one of the pallbearers, and I obviously sat in the front row. My brother and sister, as well as my father's 2 sisters and brother, sat with me. Everyone else took whatever seats were available. My girlfriend was seated in the second row. She hasn't met many of my family members because I rarely see them. After the funeral, she began complaining about being sad with strangers and claiming she should have been sad with me. I informed her that there was no room in the front row and that my siblings, aunts, uncles, and their partners would be fine sitting further back. She said I should have sat with her. I pointed out that it's my father's funeral. Of course, I'm going to sit in the front and say she's being selfish by making the funeral all about her. She said that was unfair, and she didn't want to be sad with strangers. I just said it wasn't like she had to sit and talk to them. It was less than an hour of sitting in silence. She just said that I should sympathize with her. I reminded her that it is my father's funeral, but she is demanding sympathy because she has to sit next to people. She claimed I was insensitive and should apologize. Am I a jerk for not sitting with my partner at the funeral? I just hope most people can cope. Is obviously not the jerk here. I just think it's so obvious why the OP was sitting up front, and they should have just been fine and powered through it. Even if you don't want to sit with strangers, do it for the support, right? 2454 commented on the comfort of the seat, not the jerk. Your girlfriend is acting extremely entitled. The family and pallbearers sit together for a reason. Your girlfriend should have been there to comfort you, not complaining because she had to sit for an hour with strangers. Our next story is about whether I am a jerk for hanging up on my girlfriend after she left me on hold for 5 minutes. 30 minutes into our phone call, my girlfriend, a 30-year-old female, asked me, a 40-year-old male, if she could put me on hold to answer a call from a female friend. I said yes, no problem. I expected her to be there for a minute or less, just long enough to inform her that she was on the other end of the line with me and would call her back. 1 minute turned into 4 or 5 minutes and I hung up. She called back and was upset because I hung up. Am I a jerk for expecting her to only leave me on hold long enough to inform her friend that she would call her back? It is impolite to keep someone, especially your significant other, on hold for more than 30 to 60 seconds while another friend calls to discuss a non-emergency. So, am I the jerk, or is she? I don't think Gopi is being a jerk by pointing this out. I believe many people in that situation will make the same assumption. Oh, they'll just say they're talking or something and then get off the phone quickly. Nobody enjoys third wheeling, which is two other people having completely separate conversations. I think most of us can think back to a time when our friend was over and their parent came to pick them up. And all of a sudden, your parents and theirs just suddenly have this 30-minute convo while you're awkwardly just like, so I guess you're leaving soon. To your friend Snoop. Opinions 8,755 commented. Not that jerk. She shouldn't have been upset at you for hanging up. If anything, she should have just apologized, and everything would be fine. But I wouldn't be too concerned if my wife forgot about me and was talking to her friend. I'd just send a text saying, call me when you're done, or whatever our next story is. Am I a jerk for telling my husband that I will never drive him in the car? Hello, everyone. I'm a 30-year-old female without a driver's license. I grew up in a country where car ownership is not very common. Moved to the United States 5 years ago. I was a student for the first 2 years, so I couldn't afford driving lessons and didn't have enough time to learn. Then I got married. My husband has driven since he was a teenager. He grew up in the same country that I did. My husband moved here about a decade ago. He taught all of his friends to drive. He has taught friends of friends to drive. He forced me to learn how to drive. Okay, fair enough. I've got to drive while I'm in the United States. He said he'd teach me. I was extremely excited. But the yelling did not stop. Every time I attempted to get behind the wheel, we would arrive home with me in tears. This happened 3 years ago. It was so bad that I am now too afraid to drive. I enrolled in a driving school 2 years ago. 10 hours of driving lessons cost around $600. I did well, and the trainer said I was fine and just needed to practice. But who would I practice with? My husband. I don't have any close friends here to ask for this favor. Again with the yelling, and I eventually lost all confidence. Today, we try again. As usual, I was chastised for putting our lives in danger by not making the turn faster. I immediately stopped and asked him to drive. When we got home, I told him it would cost $1,000 or $2,000. I'll go to the driving school, practice with them, and get my license. And I will never drive with my husband in the car again unless it is an emergency. He became enraged and shouted at me. Am I the jerk? Growing up, I sympathized a lot with Opie as I learned to drive. I definitely had some people who wanted to teach me who were, let's say, aggressive. As Opie described their partner as having innate anxiety about driving and getting behind the wheel. That kind of stuff did not help. Not the jerk, but a flagrant digression. I was in a similar situation when I first learned to drive. One parent would yell and scold me, causing me to become flustered and make mistakes. It always felt like a test. My other parent was much more helpful and could correct mistakes without yelling. It sounds like you've clearly communicated the aspects of his driving instruction that you dislike. If he can't change his teaching style to benefit you, you should be able to pursue driver's education that is actually beneficial to you. After all, the goal is for you to obtain your license and be able to drive independently. He appears to be upset that you will continue to tolerate his yelling and scolding. Our next story asks whether I am a jerk for hiring a gardener when my boyfriend wants me to mow the lawn. My boyfriend and I lived together and shared a house on a quarter-acre lot, some of which had steep hills because we lived in the water on a high table. My boyfriend usually mows the grass, but he's currently injured and has asked me to do it. I tried it once, but it was a struggle because I lacked the strength to push the mower up hills. I then hired a professional gardener for $70 to do the job. My boyfriend got annoyed with me because he thinks a woman who does yard work is very attractive. It's a waste of our money, and I should learn how to do it in case he goes away or something happens to him. He told me not to be a princess. Am I a jerk for sticking to my guns? First and foremost, it is difficult, if not impossible, for Opie to do because of the hills, as long as they have the disposable income to spend $70 each. How is Opie the jerk? They could save money, but it's easier and they simply can't do it. It's me. 12 comments, not the jerk. You tried mowing the lawn, but it was too physically demanding for you, especially with the steep hills. Hiring a professional is a practical solution, and it is up to you to decide how to handle tasks you are uncomfortable with. Your boyfriend's remarks about yard work, being sexy, and calling you a princess are dismissive of your efforts. If mowing the lawn is too difficult, hiring help makes sense, especially since it is a temporary solution while he is injured. The next story is about whether I am a jerk for reacting to my friend's pregnancy. So, I'm a 22-year-old university student, and almost all of my friends are between 18 and 25 years old. Students or recent graduates live in my university town. Also, almost all of my friends are LGBT and in queer relationships, so there are rarely pregnancy scares in my social circles. However, when there is, it is always a bad thing. One of my closest friends from my hometown is Katie, a 31-year-old heterosexual woman. I have been friends with her for 10 years. She has never been in a serious or long-term relationship, only a series of situational relationships involving one-night stands. She is financially secure and supports herself. She is not a student, but she has always stated that she does not want children and does not want to settle down. I stayed in my university town over the summer to finish my master's degree, so I haven't seen Katie in a while. But we talk every day, and she's never mentioned getting into a relationship. We hadn't spoken in 3 days 2 weeks ago, and I was beginning to worry about her. Then, at 3 a.m., she randomly texted me, "I am pregnant." So I replied, "Oh crap. Are we glad or sad about this? Who is the father?" Because I didn't want to celebrate too soon, and everything I know about her suggests she wouldn't be happy about this. She did not respond, but over 24 hours later, she called to yell at me, asking why I couldn't just be happy for her. Also, asking the questions I did is extremely rude and disrespectful. I told her that none of my other friends would be happy about it, and she had always stated that she didn't want children, so I wanted to make sure I was reacting appropriately. And she didn't sound happy about it. In her message, she stated that I was psychoanalyzing her, that she is an adult who can do whatever she wants, and that if I continue to be negative, she does not need me in her life. If she told me she was pleased with it, I would have been pleased for her and supportive. I honestly didn't know. She also stated that she trusted me enough to tell me and had not told anyone else. Also, inquiring about her sex life felt very intrusive. She has always told me about her sex life throughout our friendship because we are that open. Then she hung up on me, and we have not spoken since. She has ignored all of my text messages and phone calls. Am I a jerk? I am worried. I've lost a close friend because of this. We had never fought like this before, but I'm not sure if what I said was incorrect, so I just wanted to get an outside opinion. Thanks. Edit. Hey, sorry I was gone all day. I just wanted to respond to the 2 most common questions I have seen. We actually became friends at the ages of 13 and 21 in February 2015, so nearly 10 years, not exactly 10 years. She was nearly 22 at the time. We met online through a fandom and later discovered that we live in the same city. Nothing weird has ever happened. Also, I live in the United Kingdom, began university at the age of 18, and am about to finish my master's in November, when I will be 20 to 23 years old. Also, she has yet to respond to my text. Thank you for your comments. I'm going home for Christmas, and if we haven't spoken by then, I'll ask if she wants to meet up. I think Opie's reaction was reasonable and mature. I don't think it's crazy psychoanalysis when you consider that the person previously stated that they don't want children. When you receive a text, know that I am pregnant. If you don't ask how you're supposed to feel, I believe that taking that 50/50th chance and going with it is setting yourself up to be a much bigger jerk than asking for the least commented, not the jerk. Given the closeness of your relationship, her stance on motherhood and relationships, and the fact that she sent this at 3 a.m. during the bad news hours, you were perfectly justified in asking what you did. I have a newlywed close friend who sent me a picture of a document from her doctor informing her that she was indeed pregnant with the caption, "What?" And I responded, "How do we feel about this?" There was no question about who daddy was. That was one issue that was never discussed. And you know what? She wasn't happy right then. She was surprised and taken aback because she had several plans that would have to be postponed. She was off for a few days. When she finally understood what was going on, she was overjoyed. The baby is finally here, and we are all overjoyed and moving forward with our lives. However, when she told me, I had no idea how she felt, and neither did she. A woman can feel a variety of emotions about a new pregnancy, especially if the circumstances are unclear. It is wise for her to ask as a friend. I assume she was fine with my question because I am now the baby's godmother. So all is well that ends well. I understand that. Who is the father? She probably felt judged, so perhaps that question could have waited. But given what you said, I'm assuming you were simply shocked by what you'd read. It wasn't done maliciously to surprise. Nobody reacts perfectly when they are shocked, Icy Blue Dragon commented. Heck, I was married for 3 years. We spent 10 years together. I was 28 years old, and we were actively trying for a baby. And when I got the positive pregnancy test on the first try, I was like, wait, did I really think this through? I agree with you. Happy news usually does not arrive at 3 a.m. with a flat text and no emojis. Our next story is about whether I am a jerk for telling my mother that I will not be going on vacation to celebrate my half-brother's 16th birthday. There's a lot of background. I, a 16-year-old male, will turn 17 soon. I live with my father. My parents are divorced, but with a twist. They had already divorced when I was conceived, like a few weeks after Dad made it clear that he wanted to be in my life. Mom and he did not reconcile while she was pregnant with me. She met her husband, Dan. It started awkwardly, especially when Dan arrived at the hospital while Mom was in labor, but Dad was in the delivery room. It became worse during Mom and Dan's engagement when he wanted to take me out of state for 4 nights without Mom. Dad needed to give permission for it to happen, but he declined. Dan argued that he would be my second father. I'd grow up with 2 fathers, and he should be trusted to take me out of state for 4 nights. Dan was constantly complaining about my father and telling me about that incident, as well as how Dad treated him as a second-class parent. He also mentioned his father pushing Dan out of the delivery room, which leads me to believe that there is still a lot of jealousy surrounding that. He also mentioned that my parents divorced before my birth. I despised Dan for doing that, and my loyalty is to my father. I have rejected Dan in every way possible, and Dan blames my father for it. My mother never told Dan to back off. She'd also encourage us to spend time together. When I was younger, I made Dan's life difficult in retaliation for the way he spoke about my father. I also staged a few big scenes when Dan tried to convince others that he was my father. I did this in front of my half-brother. Dan most likely despises my father as much as I do. My half-brother has grown up knowing how I feel about Dan and how Dan feels about my dad, so he despises my father on Dan's behalf. He doesn't like how I treat Dan, so we fight a lot. My half-brother tries to convince me that Dan is a better father and that I should treat him better and crap. We don't like each other, and I can honestly say that I don't love or care for my half-brother, and I have no loyalty to him. We've never had a good relationship. We are constantly fighting about Dan and Dad and our relationship, if you can call it that. When I told my half-brother that I would never like or respect Dan and would rejoice if he and his mother divorced and I never saw him again, my half-brother believes Dan deserves better. I despised Mom's house, so my father petitioned the judge last year to grant him custody. I was interviewed and custody was changed, but I still need to leave. It's 1 week and a month until I turn 18. My half-brother will turn 16 in May. Mom promised him a birthday vacation. She wanted to confirm dates with me so that we could all be there. And I told her I wasn't going, that I wasn't celebrating her other son and wouldn't be in the future. She began crying and asking why we had to be like this, and she told me that we were family, and I should be there because I might regret losing a brother someday. I told her I wouldn't change my mind, and she said I was being unfair to everyone. Am I a jerk? I hope he's not a jerk. Dan clearly violated the classic Golden Step parent faux pas golden rule. Do not try to impose yourself as the new parent or parent. Number 2, or something similar to I am now dad and or mom. Allow it to happen naturally, if at all, or it will almost certainly fail. The jerk did not comment, but Royally Oaky did. This all began with Dan declaring that you would have to dance if he accepted the role of step-parent and friend. All of the fighting and animosity may not have occurred. At this point, everything appears to be set in stone, and everyone must accept the situation as it stands. Opie responded that Dad was still trying to win, but I meant what I told my half-brother about how happy I would be if he and my mother divorced and I never saw him again. I have no respect for the guy and never bring him up when discussing family with others, but he is blinded by his desire to hurt my father. Our next story is about whether I was a jerk for kicking out my cousin over a Reddit post. I, 28-year-old female, and my husband, 29-year-old male, hosted my cousin, 23-year-old female, at our place since last summer because she wanted to find a job at our city, and we were the only one she knew. We aren't particularly close, but my parents begged me to let her stay. My husband has little native blood. He doesn't understand the language or culture, but we named our newborn after his grandfather. Only his middle name. Fake names. John Jr. is 2 in June. Harrison. Well, 5 months after our beautiful boy was born, I ran into an old colleague who showed me a screenshot of my boy's name on a subreddit dedicated to making fun of uncommon or misspelled names. Though the post was deleted, my colleague took a screenshot because it sounded familiar. In the comments, she stated, "The OP has also made snickering comments on my child's names, with people cheering her on." We dug a little deeper, and I was able to confirm it was my cousin's profile, from her interests to her photo posts. My husband and I confronted her about it, and she stated that the majority of people agreed with her that it was a stupid and horrible name. She also said it didn't matter if it was a cultural name because my husband and I can't communicate and aren't even involved in the culture. My husband was furious, and we decided to kick her out. She has since blasted us on Facebook and in family group chat for kicking her out in a foreign city. And because she was unemployed and we were setting our son up for failure with names like that, she claimed she was doing us a favor by demonstrating how horrible a name it was. However, I don't believe that is the case because it was posted nearly a year ago, and she appears to have no intention of disclosing otherwise. So, am I really a jerk? Edit. I saw the post on another subreddit. Let's clarify the fictitious names. Harrison was chosen because it is a simple white name that can be replaced by Daniel or Hemsworth. What is Jared's real name in June? There are quite a few of them in my city. Amanda will be Jordan June Unipingu. For reference, here's a famous singer with the exact same name. Why is my husband so disconnected from his culture? Would you like to guess what colonialism did to Australian Aboriginals? So, with that very complicated name that I probably butchered out of the way, I believe Opie is clearly not the jerk. Listen, I get annoyed when people name their children Braxton, but spelled with 12 letters or whatever, or when I read a recent story about someone naming their child Ruff, as in the sound a dog makes. However, when it comes to cultural names, you might think they're strange or crazy. For those who do not read the captions or are only listening, the spelling of Toon June is DJRTJUNTJUN. So obviously, if you have no understanding of the culture, you will see that and wonder, did you name your child by smashing the keyboard or what? But once you realize it's a cultural thing to which you have ties, it's likely to be extremely uncommon in another location, but you should be able to understand why it was done. Comfortable C2 4 or 5 4 comments, not the jerk. Your cousin abused your hospitality by mocking your son's middle name. There is no justification for this. She freaked out and found out the consequences, and she never intended to tell you about the post. She was simply looking for likes and followers on her profile. Our next story is about whether I was a jerk for laughing when I saw my boyfriend shave his facial hair. My boyfriend, a 24-year-old male, and I, a 21-year-old female, have been officially together for about 5 months. He, had a full beard for the entire time I've known him, and I believe he's been growing facial hair since he was about 15. So the only pictures I've seen of them without one date back to middle school or earlier. He FaceTimed me yesterday during his lunch break at work, and I was surprised to see that he had completely shaved. He hadn't told me he was planning it, so it surprised me when I answered the phone. My first thought was that he was actually living with his high school-age brother. That looks very much like him. And when I realized it was him, I gasped and couldn't stop laughing for about a minute. Obviously, he was upset, but I tried to reassure him that I still liked how he looked. I was just surprised because he looked so different and much younger without facial hair, and I wasn't expecting to respond to that call. He was still upset and quickly hung up, saying something like, "This is why I never fully shave." I was supposed to see him today, but he hasn't responded much since then. Am I being a jerk with my reaction? I don't think Opie is a jerk. I honestly believe that laughter is a very normal response in a variety of situations. And when you know someone who has always had a beard and then they shave it, it can make a big difference. So Opie can expect to see someone see something completely unexpected, as well as have a moment of confusion and reflection on why they were confused at the time. It's not crazy that Opie laughed. It's not as if Opie said anything negative or said, "That looks awful." They still said they liked their appearance. It only took them a beat. Legal run. 434 commented that you are the jerk if you called them up with a new haircut out of nowhere, and he didn't recognize you, then laughed when he realized it was you. You would not hesitate to call him a jerk. 777 commented on how well it was done. A haircut is a change, but a beard covers half of the face. Guys who have never seen their girlfriends without a beard decide to surprise them by shaving their beards. Expect a shocked reaction. I swear, every guy I've seen with a beard and then without a beard looks completely different. I can't put it into words. It suddenly reveals facial features that were hidden by the beard, which is shocking. Believe me, I didn't recognize a friend who grew a beard for a few years before deciding to shave it. I literally did not recognize him. The next story is, am I a jerk for noticing a girl in the gym while my girlfriend was present? I'm 20. My girlfriend is 23, and we began dating 5 months ago. We usually work out together, but she was running late for class, so I started without her. While there, I noticed a girl struggling with her squat form because her knees were bending in unevenly and her back was not straight, so I gave her some advice to avoid injury. After that, I returned to my usual routine. A few minutes later, she asked me to spot her for a heavy set because the gym was practically empty aside from us. I agreed, believing that assisting someone who was lifting a heavy object was simply common sense. I was standing close to her to ensure she didn't get hurt, and we ended up chatting briefly after the set. I cracked a few jokes about her form, which made her laugh, but I didn't think much of it because it felt like a typical gym interaction. My girlfriend, on the other hand, arrived just in time to see us like that. She didn't say anything at the time, but she later became very upset. She said it appeared that I was being too friendly, and that helping her with her form and spotting her when she wasn't there went too far. She also advised me not to be too close to another girl in the gym, especially when joking around. I tried to explain that I was just helping someone and did not think it was inappropriate, but she is still upset about it. So, while I understand why she's upset, Opie isn't the bad guy here. I suppose it will vary depending on your comfort level, limits, and boundaries in your relationship, but I believe there are legitimate people out there who would stay in a relationship with me. Opie's actions are inexcusable, but I believe they go too far. Naked Life Coach suggested that you could have resolved this by waving your girlfriend over and introducing her as your girlfriend to the person you were spotting, not the jerk, but relationships. Take communication. It is now up to you. Rather than arguing your point, ask her what you can do in the future to allay her fears. However, if she is irrationally jealous, that could be a red flag. But jealousy usually has a cause, whether it's her own insecurities or your actions, or a combination of the two, etc. What would you think if you saw her standing next to another man in the gym, smiling and laughing, and she didn't introduce you when you arrived? Our next story. Am I a jerk for telling my parents that I will only support them if they return to their home country? My parents moved to North America from a developing country when I was 4 years old. My siblings were aged 2 and 6 months. My father worked hard to provide for us, and my mother worked hard to ensure that we did not miss out on the opportunities they provided for us. They also send money home to help my grandparents, sometimes at the expense of our family here. My sisters are all married and have families now. My parents are about to retire, and they want us to support them in the same way they supported our grandparents. The issue is that we can't afford to pay for everything here. Even with my parents' savings and my father's pension, they cannot maintain their current lifestyle while he works. However, with their and our money combined, they can live like gods back home. We could sell their home, use the money to purchase a villa in a gated community. They could always fly back to see us. They could literally live in the top 1% there instead of struggling here. The only problem is the grandchildren. They want to be with them all the time. They believe that my sisters and I are exiling them. We are giving them the opportunity to live great lives in a country with no snow, where food costs 112.45 of the year, and where healthcare is actually rated higher. Then we look ahead 20 years, when everything is said and done. I offered them the same amount they sent their family. It will purchase their groceries every month, and that is it. They believe I'm being stingy and mean. Opie is definitely not a jerk. To be honest, if parents grow up and receive anything from their children, it's almost like icing on the cake. If parents set the expectation that when they grow old and gray, their children will support them, send them money, or move them into their home to care for them and change their diapers, I believe that many parents will face difficulties when they reach that point. Opie is making them an offer that is truly beneficial to them as a whole. Even then, alternatively is still providing some level of assistance. Default is commented. Certainly not the jerk. I try not to judge other cultures based on ignorance, but the idea of future generations supporting previous generations is essentially a Ponzi scheme. It quote as a terrible way to build a society. Your parents are being stubborn. They want to have their cake and eat it. They did not support your grandparents' stay in the United States. They supported their stay in your home country. You are being generous by offering to do the same. I will never be able to afford my ideal retirement, which would include a beautiful house in the Caribbean.